please join me in welcoming the wonderful brain lady herself, Julie Anderson. Thank you.
Wow, this has been an exciting morning already. Wow. Thank you so much for coming. This is awesome. I feel very blessed and honored with the reception that we received here. We had to turn so many away, and I just really appreciate that you are spending this hour with me, and I hope to bring you a lot of very valuable information that I'm sure you'll love. We're starting out with a little. I figured, everybody's been sitting for so long. You got to work your brain a little bit. How many people can tell me how many squares are up there? Normally I count 30, but somebody counted 32, so I'm like, wow, I'm impressed. Does everybody see where all those are? Did you get that? So you've got your 16 main ones. You've got your big one. You've got 4 squares that contain 4 each. You've got 4 squares that contain 9 each. Actually, I should say you have 1, 2, 3, 4. You've got 8 squares that contain 4 each. You've got 4 squares that contain 9 each. These are great to do when your brain starts to get tired, okay? When your brain starts to get tired, you're sitting at your desk, you've been working a long day, this is what I want you to do. I want you to pull out a brain game. And in addition to that, so we are here to talk about stepping into your power and rocking your natural gifts. And this is such a powerful presentation because we're basing it on literally your brain wiring. But before we start, I'm going to jump up here and I'm going to ask if anybody in the room could use just a little bit of brain power. Anybody use a little bit of brain power? Okay, I'm going to warn you, heads up. All right. Oh, she wasn't even asking for one and I tossed one at her. Okay, we got some over here. Woohoo! Okay, let me get a couple in the back of the room. Woohoo! All right, I'm gonna wait. I think I can do 2 more, but I also have an afternoon session. One over there, one over there. All righty. Now, this seems like a little bit of a silly way to begin the presentation. However, what I did is I just engaged your brain. I engaged everyone's brain. Even though you may not have caught the brain, you wanted to know what it was I was going to throw, right? You were curious. So your brain got engaged with what I was presenting. And it helps everyone to visualize what it is that we're talking about. Because we are using neuroscience. We are using brain science to help present this information today. Now, I tell people that their brain is their most valuable asset. When you learn to maximize the power of your individual brain, tap into your innate brain gifts, the sky is really the limit. And the value of your brain and the ability that you can tap into far exceeds any financial thing that you have. Because that brain is going to lead you to the financial success if you learn how to use it right. It's also going to lead you to incredible relationship success. John Rady is one of the neuroscientists that I follow, and he makes the comment, he says, a better understanding of how the brain works gives us a better way to get a handle on who we are. So when I'm talking about neuroscience, I'm not talking about it in terms of, traumatic brain injuries or neurological disorders. I'm talking about it literally in terms of your individual brain strengths, your brain gifts, and how it affects your personality. This is what I like to call the brain-personality connection, okay? And it helps us, when we understand the science, it gives us so much reason why, and it gives us the confidence to step into our natural giftedness in a powerful way. So that's what we're going to talk about today, but I want to illustrate just how our brain has natural gifts in it. Areas of your brain that you actually spend less energy to work out of. So if everybody can put down their pins for me for just a minute, and I want you, let's see if I can do this, holding everything. Fold your hands like so. Some have the left thumb on top like me, some the right thumb on top. Who has the left thumb on top like me? Okay, you ladies are good to go. The rest of you, can we talk privately a little bit? I'm just teasing. There's no difference. It's not a sign of, intelligence or anything like that. It's just the way your brain naturally does it. But here's the kicker. What I want you to do now is I want you to flatten your hands out, and I want you to intertwine them just the opposite way. How does that feel? Very weird, right? Okay, well, I got one for you. Now I want you to fold your arms. Really doesn't have any difference in terms of intelligence or anything like that. But without hitting the person sitting next to you, I want you to try to fold them just the opposite. Right? It's a little challenging. Right? And here's the reason why. You see, your brain naturally tells your arm, your hand, to fold in a certain way. It does it automatically. It is easy. It almost takes no thought. However, when you make your brain do something it's not naturally gifted to do, is it comfortable? No. Is it easy? No. See, because every single thought, it takes more thought, and every single thought in the brain takes extra oxygen, extra glucose, extra micronutrition. It is heavy in the brain. And this is the exact same thing with your natural gifts. So that's what we're going to walk through. We're going to walk through the facets of the brain-personality connection. They are as follows. You have your introversion, extroversion, ambiversion level. We're going to touch on that. You have your brain gender. We're going to spend a little bit of time on really understanding your gifts as a female, because there is a difference in the brain wiring between a man and a woman, and it gives us gifts. Just like their wiring gives them certain gifts, our wiring gives us certain gifts. And it's imperative that we understand those and don't shame yourself for them, because it is a gift. We are going to talk about the communication styles, also known as sensory modality, technically in the brain. We're going to talk about your brain quadrant dominance, fascinating information here. And then we're going to talk nurture and how we have this natural, beautiful brain, and then we're born. Stuff happens, okay? So we're just going to jump right in, and we're going to talk about the introversion, extroversion, ambiversion level. Contrary to popular opinion, this is not how shy or how outspoken you are. This is literally controlled by the reticular activating system in the brain. And it dictates how much external stimulus going on out here the brain likes at any given moment in order to function at its peak. Okay? So you have the extreme introverts or the moderate extroverts, and they're way over here. And basically, they have a very wide awake brain. So they don't need very much stimulus happening out here to function. Picture it this way. It's like they're taking photographs of life with this huge wide-angle lens. So they only have to take one or two snapshots, and then they're able to withdraw in order to process all the details in these big, huge pictures that they just took. And that's their gift, because they can function and they can do detailed or they can do very non-stimulus tasks for hours on end and be perfectly comfortable doing so. But now on the opposite end of the scale, over here you have your extreme to moderate, your moderate to extreme extroverts. And needless to say, their brain is completely opposite. So their brain is naturally sleepy, which means that if they don't have a lot of stimulus going on out here, they fall asleep. My brother-in-law, he was a beautiful extreme extrovert. And years ago when he was dating my sister, this was back before they invented the wheel, by the way, quite a while ago when he was dating my sister, he would come over. And if you did not actively engage in conversation with him, I am not exaggerating that within 5 or 10 minutes, the man would fall asleep sitting up. He'd just be like, his brain was out because there was nothing giving him extra stimulus. See, they're taking pictures of the world with these little snapshots like a telephoto lens, and so they're going, snappy, so that they can take in and collect information that keeps their brain awake. So they tend to be drawn to these high stimulus situations. That is their gift. So they can function, you extroverts out there, you can function in situations that would absolutely, literally kill the introvert. Their brain would completely shut off. It is your gift. own it. Now, right in the middle, you have ambiverts, and ambiverts can kind of swing either way. One day they can be an introvert, the next day they can be an extrovert. They're fairly moderate, and they don't receive a whole lot based on that, a whole lot of criticism by society, like your introverts and your extroverts do. Okay, we're going to move on to the second section of the brain personality connection. This is your sensory modality. This is also known in some circles, sometimes we call it your learning preference, your learning style. The thing about this is literally how your brain prefers to process incoming data, most efficiently and effectively. So unless sensory impaired, we all use all of these senses. However, your brain has that natural way, just like you folded your hands a comfortable way, has a natural way of processing information faster, with better efficiency. So the visuals, they make up about 50% of the population, and you visuals in the audience, you're the reason why I have overheads primarily. You're the reason why I have pictures on my handouts, because I know you have to see the pictures. You process information most efficiently and effectively based on what comes in through your eyes. So when you walk into the room, you notice if the screen's a millimeter off, right? You notice if the person you're talking to, if their hair is out of place, or if they have that little piece of lint on their clothes. I honestly have had conversations. I was conducting a networking meeting a few months ago, and the person I was talking to literally stopped me mid-conversation, said, "I am so sorry, I have to fix your shirt because it's driving me crazy." For a visual, they are so gifted with what they see in their eyes that they're distracted if there's something out of place. And they make up about 50% of the population if you don't take gender into account. Tends to be a little bit higher male with the visual preference because women have a little bit higher auditory. In general, your auditories are about 20% of the population. What is important to them, what registers in their brain the fastest, the most efficiently and effectively, is what they hear. Words are incredibly important to them, and actually, when you're scanning the brain, reading is an auditory function. Even though you are using your eyes, what do you hear in your head when you're reading? You hear the words, right? So it's an auditory function. So they are gifted in, guess what? Talking. That's our gift, is auditories. By the way, I'm an auditory. Did you figure that out? Right? It's their gift. So they process information most efficiently and effectively based on that, what they hear. So when they walk into the room, it's the sounds in the room that they're going to notice. It's the tonality of voices that they're going to pick up on. Okay, very good at hearing things like that. Kinesthetics make up the other 30% of the population. I've seen a lot of different statistics out there. In my personal opinion, if I were to give you an assessment right now, I can pretty much guarantee if we split up the room, especially when we have men in the room, because men tend to favor the kinesthetic side, I would split up with this figures. Almost always I have 30% of the room that come over into the kinesthetic corner once they realize what it means. Being a kinesthetic means you're processing information most efficiently and effectively on what you feel. So every surface of your skin gets involved. Your gut, kinesthetics have a deeper sense gut response. They also tend to have a heightened sense of smell, which is kind of interesting. So if any of you know somebody that, boy, they just pick up on smells right away, then you most likely they're kinesthetics. Now, kinesthetics are the least appreciated in society. They are the least rewarded in society, even though that is the way their brain brings in information the most. And they will sense things when they walk into a room. They will feel the way the room works. That's their gift. And yet we don't reward that in Western society, right? There's not a lot of, as women we can do it a little bit. We can get away with the hugs, but really there's not a lot of touching. There's all kinds of statistics that show, there's one that I think is fascinating. In France, during a 30-minute, they were watching people in a coffee house. In France, in 30 minutes, they did a casual touch 220 times. Here in the United States, 22. We just don't reward kinesthetics. Okay, now we're going to talk about brain quadrant dominance. This is really fascinating. So Dr. Richard Heyer, who works out of the Bay Area of California, he says that according to his current research, each individual is believed to have in one of these four quadrants of the brain, the ability to work with up to 1/100th the amount of energy burn. So literally it's easier. It's a no-brainer, they don't have to think, right? So you have four main quadrants in your brain, 2 on the right, 2 on the left, or 2 in the front, 2 in the back, depending on how you want to look at it. And what I've done is I've kind of broken them up and described them a little bit, and this is based on what functions take place in that section of the brain. Okay? So when you look at the front left portion of the brain, if you're over here in the front left, this is what I call the boss quadrant, right? It's the boss quadrant because it is all of the boss type activities. Inductive, deductive reasoning, authority delegating, telling people what to do, right? Goal setting, incredibly logical, fact-based. Okay, that's what this portion of the brain is. All right, I give them the red triangle because red is a passionate color, and this is a very strong personality type. Very strong, very passionate. And the red because sometimes our personality can be a little bit prickly. Little bit prickly. I often tell the story of my sister and I. So I have 4 sisters. My oldest sister's back there helping me today. The sister in between the two of us, her name shall remain named unnameless to protect the innocent. Anyways, we're out, I don't know, it was probably 10 years ago, and we're shopping and we're looking and we're thinking how interesting it is that the clothing styles have gone back to where they were, when we were back in the 80s. And I said to her, you know what, if I just lost 50 pounds, I could pull out all those clothes I've got stored underneath the bed, wouldn't have to spend a penny, right? And I'd have a completely new wardrobe, and no one would be the wiser. Red triangle looks at me and she says, Julie, get rid of those clothes. You're not going to lose the weight and you're just wasting space. Now, happily, I knew this information because it saved her a trip to the ER and me a trip to jail for the night, right? Because my initial desire was to go straight for the jugular. However, my thinking brain stopped me and said, red triangle. Ladies, I gave birth to three boys. One of those boys was almost 10 pounds. I really doubt these hips are going to get down to size 6 again. Now, I can work at it, and I could probably do it if I really tried hard, but come on, it's going to, 10 pounds? These hips have spread. So from Chris's point of view, oops, I just said her name. From her point of view, you don't know her. Okay, all right. You're going to be all on social media. Chris said, no. From her point of view, red triangle, it was just facts in, facts out. Statistically speaking, it's most likely not going to happen. Okay, got to keep moving. We're going to go to the back left now. Back left is the master coordinator portion of the brain. This is where all of those organizing things take place in the brain. Sequential filing bank is here. Spelling is here. It's just a sequence of letters. C-A-T spells cat. It always spells cat, and it's filed, and it's done. Incredibly organized individuals because everything in this brain, this is where you track time. This is where you track money. This is where you track people. This is where you track things. They are the blue squares because everything in their life is compartmentalized. Everything in their life is stackable. It's organizable. That's the reason for the square. Blue, because blue is a very trustworthy color. Now, if you ask a blue square to do something, you can trust that they are going to get it done. And if they can't get it done, they most likely, unless they've been adapting their life, they most likely will not say no to doing it, or they most likely will not say yes to doing it unless they can. So they are the blue squares, all right? Now, if you go over this beautiful corpus callosum and you merge over into the right side of the brain, the neat thing about the right side of the brain is that it has many more neural connections to the limbic system. And what this means is that right-brainers are naturally gifted, naturally gifted in seeing, feeling, and experiencing more emotion because they literally are more connected to the emotion portion of the brain. Now, the most expressive personality type is your nurturers, okay? This is where all of the nurturing, if any of us in this room, oops, I did the wrong one. We'll go to that one in a minute. If anyone in this room is doing any of these types, peacekeeping, taking care of people, connecting people, you are using the back right portion of your brain. So for the individuals that spend that 1/100th amount of energy to work there, they are gifted in that. It's their natural gifts. All right? This is also, they're very harmonious in everything. In their speech is very rhythmic. Their connecting with people is always based on harmony, and that's because the home of music is housed in that portion of the brain. So they're naturally gifted with that. I've given them the green circles because of the fact that green is a very calming color. And this is what people try to do, the nurturers try to do. They want to keep calm. They want to keep peace. So this is what that color invokes in the brain. They are a circle because everything is connected to everything for them. Their home's connected to their cars, connected to their husbands, connected to their kids, connected to everything. All right, so it's a circle. Now, if you go to the front right portion of the brain, these are the innovators. And the reason why they're the innovators is because this is where all of the innovation takes place in the brain. When you are doing brainstorming, out-of-the-box thinking, abstract thinking, creative problem solving, you are using this portion of the brain. They see the big picture all the time, and they're always moving out here. They love change, they love new, they love innovation. That's the innovator. And they are the purple imagination or thought bubble because this is where your greatest imagination takes place. So that's the reason for this shape. Purple is kind of that mystical unknown, and they're very much into that. They're very much into, it's also royal, so this is kind of the colors, what it invokes in the brain. And I really see this as a very strong personality type for those types of characteristics. Now, here's the kicker. Just like you had the one way that was really easy for you to fold your hands or fold your arms, you have one of these 4 quadrants that's really easy for you to work out of. But the diagonally opposite portion of the brain is going to be up to 100 times as difficult to work out of. These are not your strength areas, the diagonally opposite, because of the way the neural connections run. So if you are spending your life, ladies, if you walk out of this room with one message that you become completely connected to where your BQD is, that is what I want you to know, because if you are not, you are spending 100 times as much energy in your brain second for second of every day, and that's going to leave you brain energy exhausted. All right, very important. We're going to touch on that a lot later, but a little bit this morning. Okay, so let's move over to the male-female brain. All right, is there anyone in the room who questions or doubts that there might be a little something different between the male and female brain? Right? No, we all know there is. And the reason why is literally because of the way it's wired. You see, that change starts at 6 weeks gestation. The fetus is inherently a female fetus. When the Y chromosome is present, the brain gets a chemical bath that changes the body of the baby in obvious ways, and it also changes the brain in 12 main areas. And we're going to talk about those. That changes the way we think, the way we process, the way we view things. So, men technically have a greater size brain because their bodies are bigger. However, based on the wiring, women's are actually always turned on. Our brains are always buzzing. Men's are not necessarily that way. When you look at the brain, there's a few main pieces of the brain that we're going to talk about here today that I really want to emphasize to you. The first area is the corpus callosum. Does everybody know what the corpus callosum is in the brain? Okay, so if you look at the 2 hemispheres of the brain, left and right, underneath the cerebrum, or the top part, you're going to see this area of the brain that's called the corpus callosum. And what it is it's the major neural pathways between that right and left side. In men, it is smaller than in women. As a matter of fact, women tend to have more neural connections, and those neural connections are larger in diameter. So what this does is it causes women, when they think and process information, they're bouncing all over their brain. They're just buzzing all over their brain. When men do it, they stay lateralized. They stay on one side of the brain or the other side of the brain because they don't have the pathways to move back and forth. So you have a woman's brain that looks something similar to this. Major interchange of freeways, and every single car on that freeway is a cognitive thought. It's something we're doing, it's something we're thinking about. We're juggling something, right? Men, on the other hand, are quite different. Any guesses what it looks like? Yeah. It's nice and quiet. Nice and quiet. We love our male brains, right? But here's your true gift. We can do a lot of things. If you took every one of those cars and you shoved it on this road, what's going to happen? Right? It's not a gift of theirs. Now, they can stay on point with greater brain energy than we can, but they can't do that because they don't have the neural pathways to do it. So if you are ever being criticized for doing that, stop it. Stop it right now. It is your gift. You can do something that the other sex can't do, because that's the way your brain is wired. Here's another effect of the corpus callosum being that way, is men, like I said, they stay on one side of the brains, they stay very lateral, but women, they're very global thinkers. When I talk to corporates, I have wonderful interactions with CEOs and upper level managements. And one of the great things that I tell them is, this is why you want a female and a male on a board. Right? Because men are going to think short term, they're better at short term decision making, they're better at short term visualizing, and they're going to stay right here with blinders on. But your female board member, they make a great complement to that, because they're going to think about everything. And they're going to think way more long term. So for the longevity and the benefit of their company, they need to have both sexes on their board, because women have strengths in areas that men simply do not, and vice versa. All right? Speech centers is another big difference between the male and the female brain. And this is really important to remember as well. This is why women outspeak men. Because men have typically one primary speech center. It's a Broca's area in the front left portion of the brain. Women have the potential for multiple speech centers, and they utilize the right side of the brain. This is really important in communication. This is a great key for communication with your significant other if they are a male. Because have you ever had that moment when you have looked at your spouse, or you have looked at a man in your job, or you've looked at a man in your life, and you have gone, what are you thinking? What do you feel? And they go, nothing. Well, they could be frustrated, they could be angry, they could be feeling a lot of emotions, but where's the emotions at? Right side, right? Do they have speech centers over there? Most of them don't. Which means for them to verbalize in words what the emotion they're feeling is going to be very difficult for them to do. Whereas we as women can do that. And not only can we do it as individuals, we can draw that out of other people. That's a gift. That's a gift. That makes us excellent coaches. That makes us excellent counselors. That makes us just excellent helpers. Because we can feel that in the person. We can read that in the person that we're assisting. It's a gift. There's also a portion of the brain that's devoted to language comprehension. It is 11% more dense with neurons in the average woman than it is in the average man. So we understand the meaning in speech. The man says, oh, she said she was fine. There's nothing wrong. She said she was fine. The woman goes, oh, no, she's not. Oh, no, she's not. And he's like, why? Well, didn't you hear what she said? Yeah, she said she was fine. Oh, no. Oh, no, she meant something else, right? That's a gift that women have. So if you've ever been criticized for these things, you have to stop that. You have to start looking at this and going, this is my gift. This is something I can bring to the table that my male counterparts can't. Okay, this gives women, by the way, women have a tendency to speak approximately 4 times as many words per day as a man. So men will speak, different studies have shown different things, about 10,000 words per day. Women speak about 12,000 words per day. Women speak about 50. And now you know why. Because we've got the speech centers. What it also does is it means that we're going to kind of process our information out loud. And we like bouncing it off of a counterpart. That's what we do. When we're doing problem solving, we want to do this. Whereas men, because they got to conserve their words, they don't have as many to say. So they're going to process it up here, and they're just going to focus, they're just going to kick out the answer when it's done. So I always tell my ladies, you know what, if you just want to be heard, sometimes it's best, just call a girlfriend. Just call a girlfriend, you know, right? Works better. This is another portion of the brain that's very interesting. The amygdala is larger on average in men than in women. Now, during periods of heightened emotion, women tend to use the right side, men tend to activate the left side. So what it means is the left side pays attention to detail, whereas the right side encourages action. So again, it's very complimentary and it's a gift of a woman. So the man is just going to, see the detail, but the woman is going to go, come on, let's do something about it. So it's a gift based on our brain chemistry. The hippocampus is larger in the average woman than it is in the average man. And this is a portion of the brain that is in the news a lot right now because the hippocampus is very closely related to memory. And it's related to converting short-term memory into long-term memory. So this is why you remember things that your male counterparts often don't. And you remember them in much more detail because you have a larger hippocampus with which to do it. Okay, again, gift. All right, now you would think that with all that in mind, women have some pretty cool brain gifts, right? And yet, how is it showing up in the working world? Yeah, these are some pretty interesting statistics. Women earn almost 60% of the graduate degrees and 60% of all master's degrees, highly educated, 40% of all law degrees, 48% of medical degrees, 44% of master degrees in business and management, and 37% of all MBAs. Well educated. Does that show up in business? Yeah, I don't think so. Not really, right? Makes you think. So in leadership positions, you only have about 14% of the executive officers are actually women. In corporations, 8.3%. Only 8.3% are top earners. 4.6 are the Fortune 500 CEOs. Only 4.6. And only 16.9 board seats. Remember, I just said there's a huge benefit to having men and women equally sit on boards, because the difference in their brain strengths is going to benefit the company in the long run, right? You have financial services industry, little over 54% of the workers, but only 12% of the executive officers and 18% of the board of directors, and none of them are CEOs, which I found very interesting. So this one cracks me up, absolutely cracks me up. So how much does it say, how much of the spending decisions are made by women? 80%, we know this, right? Look at how many creative directors there are in advertising that are seated with women. 3%. That means men are making most of the decisions about advertising. Think about how more effective advertising would be if we're making all the decisions, we know how we think, right? Right? So just think about that. Think about, are you holding yourself back because you've been criticized for these natural gifts that you have as a female? Do you need to make some adjustments in your thinking? All right? Because this phenomenon, I believe, exists because of this. See, we are coded in our DNA with these amazing, beautiful brain personality connection. It's there, it's who we are. And then we come out the chute and life happens. We have family expectations. We have birth order. Any firstborns in the room? All of you firstborns have most likely been spending more energy throughout your life in your brain than the rest of the room. Firstborns are incredibly forced to step outside of their comfort zone. It's just what happens. What does your family expect? What does your society expect? Where does society, when you go back and you think about those 4 brain quadrants, okay, 45% of women are believed to be the leaders, which is the front portions of the brain. 20% are believed to be the boss. Do you know of a single woman that's really, truly admired because she's the red triangle? No. Society wants them to either be the blue squares or the green circles. But 45% of us are either the imagination bubble or we're the triangle. So because of this, we start stepping away from where we're naturally meant to be. What were you shamed for? Were you shamed for things that I just highlighted were coded in your DNA? Did that cause you to hide your natural gifts? Were you rewarded for things that are not connected to your natural gifts? So you suppressed your natural gifts because you tried really hard to do those things, even though it took 100 times as much energy to do it, because that's what you were rewarded for. So for me, I'm going to hit that next slide in just a minute. For me, I was raised by an alcoholic father. I'm sure many in the room, it was a very abusive, dysfunctional family. That it tends to be the more norm. I'm sure there are a lot of you in the room that can relate. And something that was very, very specific with my dad was children were to be seen and not heard. And I cannot tell you how many times I was told to shut up and sit down. Now, I am a moderately extroverted auditory. Do you know how painful that is to tell an auditory to shut up? It doesn't work, right? Right? So this may be where I was naturally meant to be, but I was shamed for this. Obviously, I got over it because I'm a public speaker, right? Right? But that's because I had the ability to step into my power, and that's what I want for everybody in the room. I talked earlier about kinesthetics. I always like really highlighting especially the top statistic because I think it's so powerful. 85%, and this was done in the Bay Area of California, by the way, 85% of participants in an eating disorder study, bulimic and anorexics, were touch-deprived kinesthetics. Now, I'm not standing here and making the bold statement that all of those who are touch-deprived kinesthetics, or out of all eating disorders, 85% are always falling into this category, but I think it's incredibly powerful. That's how much it damages the brain if you are shamed on your natural giftedness. Okay? So you kind of have to start thinking, what is it in my life? Where do I exist? And some of this work you can take home on the flyer. There's a worksheet on the back side of the flyer. You're going to have a worksheet where you can go through. So the front side, we kind of talked about all the different brain personality connection parts. On the back side, there's some worksheets. You can actually go through, and you might need a whole book for this one. I don't know. It just depends on your upbringing, right? But go through and start thinking. What were some of the labels? What were some of the things? What were some of those negative terms? What do I still hear to this day? Because every single one of those negative terms, every single one of those negative thoughts, every single one of those things that significant people in your life said to you can push you way far away from where you're naturally meant to be. See, I tell people the worst thing that you can do to a person's self-esteem are the insignificant things said to them by significant people in their life. Think about that. That is the worst thing that you can do to your self-esteem, or that can be done to your self-esteem, are the insignificant things. They don't matter. And yet they become these monsters in our head. I talk too much. Oh, I always have to wear those comfortable clothes. Oh, I can't ever focus in school. No matter how hard I try, I can't get more than a B in spelling. I have too big of an imagination. I get in trouble for daydreaming all the time. So you're supposed to be way over there, but you come way over here. I have a really big, intensive 2-day event that's coming up on the 7th and the 8th of October here in Anaheim, and I really dig deep into a lot of this information. And it's amazing what you wind up finding out. It's amazing what you start writing on the sheet of paper. Because you start realizing that so many of the things that you have been shamed for, so many of the things that you beat yourself up for, are connected to where you naturally need to be. Now here's the big kicker. If we fail to honor our brain personality connection, we're never going to truly survive or thrive in any of our relationships in our life. We could actually be shortening our life. 22 years ago, I started studying psychoneuroimmunology. This is a big, long word. That's the word. That's the word. Psychoneuroimmunology. And basically what it means is what you think in your mind, those voices in your head, and the amount of stress that they cause for you, or the amount of stress you're under in your life, affects the chemistry in your brain. That in turn affects the immune system, either positive or negative. Now, if you doubt, due to time, I'm not going to necessarily go through having you visualize this. If you doubt that what you think in your mind can have a physical effect on your body, I want you to think about bright yellow lemons. I want you to think about, and again, in my 2-day event, I actually walk people through this visualization process. But if I were to sit up here and I were to describe a lemon, and I were to talk about the smell, and I were to walk you through slicing into that lemon, and then taking that piece of lemon and popping it in your mouth, what's going to happen in your mouth? You're going to start to salivate, right? You're going to start to pucker. It still happens to me, and I do this all the time, right? I didn't inject into the room the smell of lemon. I didn't have displayed up here fresh lemon that you could smell or hand you lemonade. I just simply described it. And yet your body responded based on what your mind thought. That is the basis of psychoneuroimmunology. So there are all kinds, and I'm going to go into this if you really are interested in this topic. I'm talking about this a lot at the 3:15 presentation. Really what this truly does to your body. But when you look at it, there's so many things. You're literally, if you're overextending or you're beating yourself up for your natural gifts, what happens? You're going to be depressed. If you're depressed, you're going to actually reduce your natural killer cell ability in your body. You are leaving yourself open for chronic illnesses because you are taking away the fighting force. You're reducing those white blood cell counts. That's important. That's heavy. So if you're supposed to be here, but you're living over there, what are you doing to your body? It can be critical. The cool thing is the opposite works too. The opposite works too. They've done some amazing studies, where they have just simply shown people funny things, or they have shown them videos about Mother Teresa, or things that just make you feel good. And it actually increases your white blood cells. So if you are able to go from over there back to over here where you're naturally meant to be, if you are able to truly stand in your power and rock your natural gifts, you will actually be improving your immune system. It's a powerful thought, isn't it? I want to introduce you real quick to Daniel Kish. Have any of you ever heard of him? He is blind. Completely blind. He had cancer, and at the age, I think it was 13 months, he had his eyes removed, so he has glass eyes. And yet he can ride on bike trails that if I spent 5 minutes on, you'd be rushing me to the ER. I'd have a broken bone. Now, technically, I became very fascinated with his story because technically, I wanted to know what happened in his brain. How could he do that? Well, he developed the ability to use echolocation. That's the technical part. And his brain adapted to that. So he can even tell you that that's a table, not that that's just an object. Through clicking, he can tell you exactly what it is. And he has amazingly set up a nonprofit agency that teaches other blind people to do the same. But the story behind is where it gets really interesting. I was able to watch an interview of his mother. And of course, the first thing she was asked is, was he an exceptional kid? She was like, no. He was like all the other 2-year-olds. He climbed on the furniture. Once he got older, he climbed the trees. He climbed the bookcases. You know. So when he was 5, I bought him a bike. One of the first things he did was he ran into a pole and chipped his teeth. So needless to say, what did the interviewer ask next? Are you crazy? Weren't you worried? Weren't you concerned that he was going to really get hurt? And she said, well, of course, I'm his mom. But I knew if I told him he couldn't, he never would. So I never told him he couldn't. And because of that, this man is doing things that by far the majority of blind people would never even imagine. He talks about his upbringing, and he said when he was in school, he was mainstreamed in school. He did not have an assistant or an aide. When recesses would happen, he'd go out on the recess with all the rest of the kids. And he said when he met an actual blind person, he thought they were weird. He did not recognize himself as being blind. That is what I want you to develop for you. I don't care what someone has said to you. I don't care how you've been criticized as a woman. I don't care what some insignificant person, boss, spouse, mother, father, sister, brother, grandparent, teacher, I don't care. If they are criticizing you for something that you are naturally gifted at, you need to stop. Because what that does is it means that it's telling your brain you can't. Well, I am here to tell you you can. You can step into your power and you can rock your natural gifts. You can't choose who raised you. You can't choose the environment you were raised in. But you know what? You sure can choose to ignore those relatives, right? Or not see them anymore. It works for me, all right? So I want you, this is one of my favorite sayings, I don't have an attitude problem, I just have a personality you can't handle. So what I want you to do right now is, and that's okay, right? That's okay. So I want everybody to stand up. Yeah, isn't that amazing? Amazing. I want everybody to take a deep breath. You've been sitting for a long time. You waited for me. I'm honored by that. Hopefully I've given you some powerful information. I want you to take a really deep breath. I want you to roll your shoulders, and I want you to repeat after me. I don't have an attitude problem. I just have a personality that you can't handle, And that's okay. Say that. Say that. And that's okay. All right, sit down. I love it. I love it. So you really need to learn to appreciate your natural gifts. You really need to think to yourself, what has Julie told me today that resonates? And how can I use this to achieve the next level in my life? How can I use it to silence those silly monsters in my head that are just that, silly monsters? They don't matter. They do not matter, all right? That's what I want you to do. And I want you to go into the world. I want you to own your brain personality connection. I want you to own your strengths. I want you to rock them. And I want you to take that into the world.